This is Maximus Aviation.
Well, if Boeing thought their shakeup of their top dogs would send waves of relief throughout the aviation community, they were wrong. Just the opposite, as a matter of fact, especially if you ask Sir Tim Clark, the president of Emirates Airlines. While he said Boeing's recent management changes were a good sign, Clark seems to imply that Boeing may be just proving that famous quote attributed to Albert Einstein, who most likely never actually said it, but more likely it originated with 12th century scholar Bernard of Chartres. Nevertheless, it's true just the same. That being, of course, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And unfortunately, that still seems to be the thinking over at Boeing. But it's still early in the process, so I'm not going to prejudge Boeing's efforts just yet. Because yes, these management changes absolutely could work. However, not many aviation experts seem to think so. So just days following Boeing's announced management changes, Emirates President Tim Clark spoke up about the future of Boeing's leadership, telling CNBC that the only way to clean this mess up is to put engineers at the helm. Clark says to fix Boeing's issues, the company needs a strong engineering lead at its head, coupled to a governance model which prioritizes safety and quality. Adding that the International Association of Machinists, the labor union representing some 32,000 Boeing employees, wants a seat on the board also. Clark said this would allow those on the factory floor to be part and parcel of the decision process and fully integrated into the governance model's risk management strategies. But if you saw my last video on the subject, you heard me imply that Boeing may indeed be grooming Catherine Pope, the current COO, a position incidentally that was newly created for her in January of this year in anticipation of her taking over for the now former CEO of commercial aircraft, Stan Deal, who just got his walking papers. However, while being praised for improving Boeing's profits, Pope has zero experience in aviation engineering. But Ms. Pope does check all the right boxes that in theory gives the appearance of a brilliant idea. But can she fix it? Sure, maybe. However, consider this, the person she's replacing, Stan Deal, and no matter how big a doofus Stan Deal may have appeared to be in the past, Stan joined Boeing in 1997 coming in with McDonald Douglas and actually holds a degree in aerospace engineering and has worked in key positions on the Boeing 717 and the MD-80 aircraft programs. So one way of looking at this is that just because you're an actual aeronautical engineer who has physically built aircraft, still doesn't ensure that you aren't susceptible to that old McDonnell Douglas Boeing old school corporate culture of profits over safety and engineering. However, the 51-year-old Pope is coming in with absolutely zero engineering or aviation experience. Hell, we don't even know if she can put together an IKEA dresser. Which is funny because every time I build something from IKEA, I always have leftover bolts too. Yet suddenly now it's up to Stephanie Pope, whose background is in finance, not engineering, to determine the future of the crisis-hit Boeing MAX program, as well as trying to restore Boeing's demolished reputation and disastrous financial condition. However, the reaction to the move from within the industry suggests many airline CEOs are universally skeptical, if not outright unconvinced, that the 51-year-old Pope can deliver the turnaround required. Though she's an aerospace veteran who has racked up almost 3 decades of financial experience at Boeing, experts point out that Pope lacks the engineering experience needed to deal with such extensive production problems. Unlike Deal with his vast years of hands-on aeronautical experience, conversely, Pope's education is strictly in finance and business, and rose through the ranks through various financial management roles, eventually landing her in charge of Boeing's services division that helps support airline customers. While Pope's most recent position as Boeing's chief operating officer gave her oversight of quality control, engineering, manufacturing, and the supply chain, she had only been in the newly invented COO position since January, hardly time to develop an intimate understanding of the issues plaguing the MAX. As travel analyst Harvey Hartbelt told the Business Insider, "I think the next Boeing CEO needs to have a very strong background in aeronautical engineering, aircraft design, and manufacturing. It's not just enough to bring in someone who understands corporate finance or business strategy." And the founding and managing member of the investment firm Capital Cruisers, Keith Rosenblum, told Forbes that Boeing may want to search for its next CEO beyond its walls. This is an important first step, he said. But make no mistake, this is going to be a process that must take a solid execution to find a rock star CEO with engineering experience. He said, I would think an outsider is critical. And Rosenblum concluded by saying, look, it's no secret that part of the downfall of Boeing was a result of the McDonnell-Douglas merger and philosophy of keeping engineers out of top positions, and pointed to Deal as the only person among Boeing senior management with an engineering background. But hey, before current CEO Dave Calhoun, former CEO Dennis Muhlenberg also had an engineering background. However, he was fired after the first 2 MAX crashes that killed 346 people. And that was just the first in a series of MAX-related debacles at Boeing that eventually led to Calhoun getting his walking papers too. But getting back to Stephanie Pope, now CEO of the entire commercial airplanes division and likely a candidate for the overall Boeing CEO job. Experts say that taking the reins at Boeing commercial airplanes will require a far more hands-on approach and with it a steep learning curve. But is Pope the person for that job? Well, that's the billion-dollar question. An aviation industry consultant, Scott Hamilton, with Liam Group, answered that when he completely took the gloves off with his opinion, saying that the problems at Boeing are technical, not financial. And a technical understanding should therefore be a prerequisite for anyone leading BCA. He says, I am completely perplexed that Stephanie Pope has been made CEO of commercial aircraft. And then he stressed that nobody that he had spoken to across the industry can understand it either. Hamilton said he was also contacted by bankers in New York who expressed, quote, dismay at the news. He said, yeah, Deal probably had to go after 4 years during which he failed to resolve the quality control problems. But a better choice to lead Boeing's commercial aircraft division would have been another woman, Elizebath Lund, the division's senior vice president of quality. She has a degree in mechanical engineering and previously occupied posts including general manager of aircraft programs, head of the 777, 747, and 767 programs, and manager of Boeing's sprawling aero assembly plant near Seattle. But the once competitive Boeing-Airbus duopoly is beginning to look permanently lopsided with Airbus dominating and Boeing just looking lost in the weeds. Sash Tusa, an aviation analyst at Aviation Partners, says a key factor in Boeing's decline has been an absence of executives with a deep understanding of manufacturing at the top. If Boeing is going to sort out this mess, it needs to put engineers into senior positions. It's the hollowing out of their engineers' expertise that's at the heart of all these problems. Like Pope, CEO Calhoun will be gone by December, only holds degrees in finance and accounting. And just to put a fine point on Emirates' Tim Clark's comments from earlier, he said time unfortunately is not on their side. I would suggest that some serious lateral thinking kicks in as soon as possible. However, Ryanair CEO Michael O'Leary was a little more conciliatory on the changes at Boeing.
As Boeing's largest airline customer here in Europe, Ryanair welcomes today's management changes. Stan Deal has done a great sales job for Boeing for many years, but he's not the person to turn around the operation in Seattle, and that's where most of the problems have been in recent years. We welcome and look forward to working with Stephanie Pope, together with Dave Calhoun and Brian West, to eliminate Boeing delivery delays both for summer 2024 and into the autumn of 2024, so that hopefully we'll have no delivery delays for summer 25. So on behalf of everybody in Ryanair, I want to say thanks to Stan Deal for his service over the last 30 years. Welcome Stephanie Pope. We look forward to working with her to getting our aircraft delivered in time for summer 24 and again for summer 25.
But yours truly called it in my last video, predicting that despite industry's reservations, Pope is being considered and touted in some quarters as possible successor to Calhoun. However, much stronger candidates are being mentioned by outsiders such as General Electric boss Larry Culp, Carrier Global head David Gatlin, and others. However, another suggestion is that a better choice for CEO might be Patrick Shanahan, chief of Spirit AeroSystems, which Boeing is in talks to buy. Shanahan has been at the top of Spirit since October when he was brought in on an interim basis to troubleshoot problems, including earlier production errors concerning components supplied to the 737. Prior to that, he worked for more than 30 years at Boeing, occupying management roles across the full range of the company's civil aircraft and leading the recovery of the 787 Dreamliner widebody program after it was beset by production glitches that led to a 3-year delay in its service entry. He left in 2019 for a 2-year stint as Donald Trump's Deputy Defense Secretary. The challenge facing Pope, however, isn't just the 737 MAX production and safety issues, but even before the crashes, Boeing's MAX was struggling to compete with the sales and success of the Airbus's A320neo. While both planes are re-engined versions of older models, the Neo was less constrained by limits of how far its design can be expanded. That's reflected, of course, in its aircraft sales, with MAX raking up fewer than 6,500 orders compared with more than 10,000 for the A320neo, including 500 plus more for the XLR variant of the Neo, which can fly further than any of the MAX versions. But even with all that miserable news weighing down on them, believe it or not, Boeing is enjoying an unusual Twilight Zone-esque paradox. With the Neo in such high demand, airlines face a waiting list of several years for deliveries, something that's actually helping to sustain interest in the Boeing MAX, flaws and all, simply on the basis that it's more readily available. You gotta admit that when Boeing's best-selling plane is getting orders really only because Airbus can't make enough A320s fast enough, what does that say about the desperation of airlines? Of course, Boeing has to sort out the production issues, but it also needs to recognize that it has a deeper problem, in that the 6-decade-old 737 simply is not competitive anymore. And really, the only answer for that is for Boeing to begin work on a successor to the 737 right now, instead of waiting until the mid-2030s. However, that would be something that would further add to Pope's list of things to keep her up at night. So as I said earlier, I'm reserving judgment on new COO Elizabeth Pope, but I agree with the experts. Sadly, this seems like Boeing is still repeating their same mistakes over and over again, expecting a different result. And whether you're Einstein or 12th century scholar Bernard Chartres, well, that's just insane. Well, that's all I have for now. I got a lot of great comments on the last video on this subject, so do me a favor and head down there and educate me some more. You know me, I can always use some more education. And also, please feel free to subscribe, like, and share. And of course, remember, yeah, this is Maximus.